Is this going to be connected to something or just dangling?
This is dangling. Yeah, I just brought it.
Okay, moving along. I guess it's going to take a while getting used to the new system of 10 people, no more than 10 people. But the few of you that are here, what's my experience so far is when it comes to discussion, you have to be the first with the discussion questions, because the online people kind of lag behind. So, are you good at asking questions? What about your brother? So? Okay, get real good at it tonight, okay? Even if it's, could you explain something more about, just to get the topic going? So, your younger one, what's your name?
Anish.
Anish. Do you know who is Ram?
Yes.
You do? Do you know a little bit about Ramayana, the book about his life?
I know the whole story.
You know the whole story, okay. Okay, well, that's good. Oh, I brought the wrong folder. This is the wrong folder. So the one that I need is Sabari. Okay. There's this evening that the topic is about Sabari. You know who is Sabari? Of course, because you know the whole story. So when you think of Sabari, what do you think of?
Very nice.
Very nice. What else?
Selfless.
Selfless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had some fruits, so
She had some?
she had some fruits, so she gave them to Ram.
Fruits, so she gave them to Ram. Okay. Notebook. Do you take notes? Do you know how to take notes? Do you do stuff like that yet?
No.
No? You gotta learn. You don't want to learn. Okay. A starting point is, here's 3 starting points. The starting point is one of the great devotees in the Sri Sampradaya, some many centuries after Ramanujacharya, wrote on the order of the principal deity at Tirupati. He wrote a commentary on Ramayana. And he wrote the commentary on Ramayana following the members of the disciplic succession. So the head of the disciplic succession, even before Ramanujacharya, was Jamunacharya. And Jamunacharya gave extensive teachings to Sri Shailapurna. Sri Shailapurna was the brother of Ramanujacharya's mother, or his maternal uncle. Sri Shailapurna, in turn, extensively instructed Ramanujacharya on the teachings of Jamunacharya about Ramayana. And Ramayana is taken, among many things, but principally a treatise on Sharanagati. Sharanagati, how to surrender. So, Sri Periya Palaya, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the first part correctly, he enunciated these 18 lessons, primarily connected to surrender or Sharanagati, that are taught in Ramayana. And Sabari is symptomatic. There are others, but she's symptomatic of one in particular, and that is under the order of the spiritual master. One dedicatedly carries out the order of the spiritual master until the final stage of life, from beginning until the end, complete dedication to the order of the spiritual master. Others, some of the sages that Sri Ramachandra met when he entered into the this is primarily from the Aranyakanda section of Ramayana, the forest section. But he met sages that were just waiting to meet Ram, and then after meeting Ram, then they went to the spiritual world, because they were different reasons, but they didn't just want to attain heaven, they wanted to attain the eternal kingdom of God. They were given the opportunity to attain heaven, they declined. They wanted to be in the personal association of Lord Ramachandra and then go to the spiritual world. So staying loyal to the order of the spiritual master, Sabari exemplified that. And related, not identical, we have this nice verse, Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir Tata Devi Tata Gurau Tasya Te Katita Hyarta Prakashante Mahatmana. Unto those who have implicit faith in both the personality of Godhead, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Tata Deve Tata Gurau. One who has implicit faith, the Prakashante Mahatmana, the truths of the Vedas become revealed to that person. So Sabari also manifests. There's different explanations. We're going to hear these two. One of the explanations of her name, Sabari, had to do with her father's occupation, Shabara. And Shabara literally means one who, a pig farmer. Pig farmer. You know what pigs are, at one point. So, pig farmer. And just like in the story of Lord Jagannath, Neelamadhava was being worshipped by the head of the Shabaras. And after Jagannath was carved there's many details in between. After Jagannath was carved, Jagannath gave instructions to King Indradyumna that the Shabaras were to have specific functions in taking care of Lord Jagannath, as well as the Brahmanas. So the Shabari indicates a woman who has that birth. So one of the histories is that she was born the daughter of a tribal forest-dwelling person, a hunter, and when the daughter became of marriageable age, an arrangement was made for her marriage, and on the marriage day, her father, in honor of the occasion, ordered a number of animals to be brought into the forest to be feasted upon. And when she saw all the animals lined up to be feasted upon, she revolted. It was intolerable to her, and she left. She didn't say even goodbye, she just left because it was too much. And so she wanted instead, because it was her nature, she wanted to seek the association of holy people instead of hunter people. And she searched and searched, and she ended up finding the hermitage of Sage Matanga. And Sage Matanga made a special arrangement for her, where she could be the maidservant of all the other sages. And so she lived her life as an ascetic woman, known as Shabari, and served the sages, and particularly dedicated to Sage Matanga. And so she tells her story later on of how Sage Matanga gave her instruction to wait and serve Ram. So we'll hear some more about it. But she had faith in the personality of Godhead, although she didn't have a high education or anything like that. She was by birth not like that, and by education she didn't go to any school or anything like that. She just had some natural inclination to service to God, and by good fortune had as preceptor as Sage Matanga, and she became a perfected person. So, just a couple of other things. There's some reference. Many devotees are familiar with Vishnu Sahasranam, the section of Mahabharata. And I only recently learned this, maybe a few years ago, that Baladev Vidyabhusan wrote a commentary on the entire 1,000 names of Vishnu. And it's been translated, and two of the names are names of Vishnu that connect with Shabari. And one of those names of Krishna or Vishnu is Udaradi. We're familiar with the term Udaradi from the Bhagavatam. Anybody here remember the verse that Udaradi is mentioned? Akama, Sarvakamo va, Mokshakama, Udaradi. You familiar with that verse? Akama, Canto 2 Bhagavatam. Akama, Sarvakamo va, Mokshakama, Udaradi. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param. Not familiar? Kind of, not so much. Okay. The verse in the second canto Bhagavatam says, Akama, no desire. Sarvakama, all desire. Mokshakama, desire for liberation. Then comes this word Udaradi. And Prabhupada is translated as one who has broad intelligence or good intelligence. Tivra Bhakti, that's what they do. Whether it's Sarvakama, Akama, Moksha Kama. Tivra Bhakti. And the persons who do that are the Udaradi persons. In Vishnu Sahasranam, one of the names of Vishnu is Udaradi. And Baladev has translated that as generous. One might say it's something like how Prabhupada would repeatedly, like over and over, the Brahmana and Kripana. The Brahmana is liberal and the Kripana is miser. So we have the human form of life, and one who uses it properly is Brahmana, and one who doesn't use it properly is Kripana. So Brahmana as liberal is something similar to generous. You have this human form, he would say, you have some wealth, and generous is you, or liberal is you use it in service to beneficial things. And a Kripana is when he hoards it. So, Udaradi is generous, and it's one of Vishnu's tendencies in listing how Krishna, or Vishnu is generous. One of the ones is Ram's relationship with Sabari. He was very kind, as he was kind with so many others, but specifically Sabari is mentioned. And another one of the references to Sabari in Vishnu Sahasranam is the name of Vishnu, Mahoraga. Mahoraga is loving to his devotees. So here's what he writes, that Vishnu remains situated in the heart of his devotees. They can feel his presence and sense his presence within their heart. And he refers to Muchukunda. Although Muchukunda had never seen Krishna, he felt that his Krishna connection very strong. But sometimes the personality of Godhead doesn't just situate himself in a feeling, conscious way within the heart of his devotee, but sometimes appears before them, and he refers to Ram and Sabari. When the Lord appeared as, this is translation of Baladev's commentary on this Maho Raga. When the Lord appeared as Ramachandra, there was a great exchange of love between the Lord and his devotees. The Lord personally embraced his devotee, Guha, the king of the Nishadas. He personally performed the funeral ceremony of the great devotee Jatayu. When he visited the house of Sabari, he ate with great relish the simple offering of forest fruits. Forest fruits presented before him. In these ways, the Lord appeared before his devotees and showed his love for them. So, this is another one of the 18 items of surrender, and that is, there's one procedure where one goes looking for the personality of Godhead, and then there's another procedure where you just devote yourself to the personality of Godhead, and he comes to you. He comes before you. With Dhruva, that was the case. With Sabari, that's the case. With the sages in the forest, it's spoken of. How many years? How many years did Ram spend in the forest in exile? 14. And how many of those 14 years passed before he started killing any demons? You know, specifically Ravana and Ravana's horde. 12 and a half years. nearly 13 years. Young people, when he asks them how old they are, they say, I'm 7.5, or 12.5. Like, when you're young, you want to be older. So, in the Aranyakanda, after Ram leaves Ayodhya, the Ayodhya Kanda, he goes to the forest, the Aranyakanda. And there's a repeated sequence. And that repeated sequence is the annihilation of different demons, starting way back, Virada, and then the meeting of devotees, or sages, great souls. I want to read something here. Let's find it. After Ram and Lakshman kill a demon and deliver him, they meet a sage. These demons, this is something we're going to be speaking about starting tomorrow evening. These demons represent the obstacles to our spiritual life. Ram removes obstacles. Krishna removes obstacles. The Lord removes obstacles. We have to do something, but they are the ones that take care of the obstacle. If we work assiduously on overcoming the bad habits or attitudes that pull us down, as represented by demons, we will then get the benediction of association of saintly persons, who will help us to overcome the next obstacle. So there's the sequence. You know the story. So when Ram entered the Dandak forest, what was the first demon that he killed? Starts with a V. Virada. Right? Remember? Huh? No, that's before. This is entering into the Dandak forest. Tataka was the first demon, and Subahu. But when he entered the Dandak forest, Virada. And after killing Virada, he met Sharabanga, Sutikshna, and Agastya. Then he encountered Shiparnaka and Kara and Dushan and Trishiras and their 13,999 or 14,000 soldiers. And then he met Jatayu. Then Kabanda. And before Kabanda, Lakshmana also disfigured a female demoness, Ayomukhi. And then met Sabari, and then Hanuman. So the commentators are describing there's a pattern within Ramayana that's showing us we have obstacles, we have impurities within us, and we have to work to overcome those impurities within us. Good news, Krishna will help us. And after that overcoming of that shortcoming or obstacle, then there's good association, special association arranged by the Supreme Lord, and then that's to help us with the next obstacle we're going to address and so forth. This is Sri Vaishnava commentators explaining how Ramayana unfolds, helping us understand and enter into the Charanagati process. So that's a little background about Sabari. And what happens just before meeting Sabari? Well, there's the Shuparnaka episode, and Kara, Dushan, and Trishiras, and the soldiers of Ravan. There's Ravan's plan to kidnap Sita. There's the situation with the deer, and Lakshman goes, and Ravan comes and kidnaps Sita. So Ram comes back looking for Sita. He can't find Sita. And then this scene that's transcendental of Ram going mad and then becoming angry and all kinds of very strong emotions, and Lakshman being by his side all the while helping and finding Jatayu, and Jatayu saying what he said, the funeral of Jatayu, indicating, so they start heading in the direction that Jatayu said they went, the southerly direction. And that's where they eventually meet Virada. After Jatayu, that wonderful exchange, then comes Virada. And Virada is a Gandharva that's been cursed to take this ugly shape. And when it turns out that Virada reveals who he is and how he became Virada, Ram is asking Virada, please tell me how I can find Sita, because he wants to know how to find Sita. And Virada, he has the personality Godhead's association, but that's not sufficient because he's very attached to his worldly circumstance. So he more or less makes a deal with Ram. And the deal that he makes with Ram is, you want to know which direction Ravan went? I don't know, but if you take care of what's needed to release me from the curse that I got, that gave me this Virada body, then I will let you know how you can find out what direction Sita went. It was a conditional surrender. I'll serve you if you help me. After being cremated, I will inform you of a person who has traveled throughout the three worlds. He'll be able to assist you in locating the king of the Rakshasas. It's Sugriva. So Ram and Lakshman make this arrangement. They take him to a cave. This is Valmiki Ramayana. They take him to a cave, and deep into the cave, big cave, they build a big fire, a funeral pyre, and that Lakshmana has already constructed, and they place his humongous body on the funeral pyre. And big fatty body, and it's all making all this noise, and his body burns. And when his body burns, a celestial Gandharva form emerges. Out of the fire arose Kabanda in his original celestial form, dressed in fine garments, decorated with ornaments and garlands, seated on a celestial chariot pulled by swans. So now he's ready to give the information that Ram needs, which includes seeing Sabari. Comes a little diplomacy. For political purposes, when somebody has a political problem, there are 6 things you can do to overcome a political problem. Make war. Make peace. Assassinate the other party. Build up superior arms and fortifications. Dissension. And then finally the one he's recommending, seeking the help of others. So Sugriva is in the same situation as you. He's very qualified in so many ways. son of the sun god. He has a problem like you have a problem. His brother, Vali, who is the son of Indra, is harassing him. And he no longer has his wife because Vali is harassing him and took his wife. So make an alliance. This is one of the ways of solving a political problem. Make an alliance. And you'll find him, he is residing with 4 ministers on the top of Rishimukh mountain, which is near Lake Pampa. This is Kadamba, Kabanda, describing all of this, because he has these celestial capacities, a Gandharva, he can see stuff and understand stuff. So, go to Lake Pampa, and it's very, very beautiful there. And when you go to Lake Pampa, you'll find Sabari. She resides there. And he describes the whole area, and it's very, very beautiful because of the previous presence of the sage Matanga. And by the sage Matanga's presence, everything flourished, and then many other sages, and things became abundant. And the sage gave up his body long ago, but he instructed Sabari to stay and assist you. So go to Lake Pampa, and Sugriva is residing up on top of Rishimukh Hill, and she'll help you make this arrangement to meet Sugriva. So he's like on this celestial chariot hovering in the air, saying all these things in his Gandharva body, seeks permission for Ram to depart. Ram gives his permission, thanks him for this valuable, because he's been asking and asking and asking how to find Sita. Now he has someone who will help him find Sita. So as he parts, Kabanda says, make friendship with Sugriva. He just repeats himself. So they followed the instructions. They went in a westerly direction. They found Lake Pampa, and they spent the night by the side of Lake Pampa. And in the morning, they searched in the area. It was kind of hidden by a thicket of trees, but the sage Matanga's ashram was within that area. They went in that area, and lo and behold, there was Sabari seated before her little cottage. And what Sabari had been doing, because she describes shortly, from the time that Ram was at Chitrakoot, which was approximately 13 years ago, from the time that they meet Sabari, the sage Matanga had left, and he left this world. She had requested the sage Matanga to go with him, to enter into the funeral pyre as well. He said, no, very, very soon Ram will come, and you serve him nicely. And when you serve him, after you complete serving him, then you can come. So she says later, this happened, and at the same time, because she had powers. She was given powers by Sage Matanga, that she could see truths that others couldn't see. She wasn't an educated lady, she was a Sabari. But she was given power by this sage Matanga, who was an extremely qualified person. And she could see past, present, and future. So she knew that Ram would come. But she engaged herself under the order of Sage Matanga to be prepared to serve Ram at any time. So it doesn't describe this in the Ramayana or the commentary, but in my mind, she was doing her daily deity worship. There were paths surrounding the ashram, and she had a broom, and she would sweep the broom because any day Ram might come. She'd go in the forest and gather fruits and berries and roots and whatever she could, and have it ready in case Ram came that day. And her whole mood was serving Ram. And it went on for years, every day for years. The simple ascetic lady living in the forest, waiting under the order of her spiritual master to serve Ram when Ram would one day come. With just faith in his words, she just continued. So when he reached the hermitage of the sage Matanga, he saw many things that looked like there were inhabitants, but there weren't. She was the only one left. The other sages had also gone. They're very, very old. It's described that there were deer skin and tree bark cloths hanging on a clothesline, and they were still wet. There were flower garlands hanging here and there, and they were still fresh. No, you keep flower garlands for a while, and they dry. But the Valmiki Ramayana describes that the sages, when they were gathering water for sage Matanga, it was in the heat of the summer, they would sometimes perspire. And when the perspiration hit the ground, the sage Matanga gave this benediction that the trees that would grow from the perspiration that they dropped, the trees that would grow, the flowers would remain fresh, and when picked, they would still remain fresh, just by his benediction. So it was a pretty special place. And they had a sense that the Valmiki Ramayana describes, they had a sense that this is a very special, auspicious place. And so when they made their introductions, Sabari immediately rose because she was omniscient, knowing this is the personality of Godhead. She had power to understand he's not just a visitor, the personality of Godhead. And so she did what is appropriate. She offered a straw mat for sitting on, and some water for washing their feet and for drinking, and the exchange of some pleasant words. So here's, it's a celebrated statement that Ram makes. O ascetic, you have overcome your obstacles to penance. You have controlled your anger and your desire for food. Is your austerity in progress? O sweet-tongued Sabari, have you achieved self-control? Has your mind attained peace? Have your services to your preceptor yielded results? Those that have heard Srila Prabhupada's lectures are accustomed to hearing him say, because many different occasions he would say, when Vishvamitra Muni came to Ayodhya to invite Ram to come and help him kill Tataka and Subahu and Maricha, as soon as Dasrath, who was seated on his throne, saw Vishvamitra Muni enter into the royal assembly, he immediately stood and went respectfully before Vishvamitra Muni, and the first thing he said was, how is your progress in achieving the goal of life? How's your sadhana? How are your spiritual practices? I mean, he's a Brahma Rishi. He's not just a nice Brahmin. or a great personality, but this is, Prabhupada's statement is, this is how, when elevated persons come together, how they discuss. You know, like when you get together with somebody that you haven't seen for a long time, how is your spiritual progress? How is your path back to Godhead going? As Dasrata said to Vishwamitra Muni, to Ram is saying to Shabri. The exact words are different, but the principle is quite similar. And her reply is perfect. She said, by seeing you, because the personality Godhead has come before her, and she knows it. So by seeing you, the fruit of all my austerities is now achieved. The blessings of my preceptors is now fulfilled, and there's nothing further for me to attain. Everything is now fulfilled. After worshipping you, the best of the gods, my birth is now fulfilled. I shall ascend to the spiritual world, being purified by your glance. And she goes back to the history that when you were in Chitrakoot, I wanted to go. She's transcendentally not in a position of weakness or worldly attachment. She's transcendently attached to Sage Matanka, a pure devotee, a purely qualified person. And she wished to be with him and serve him eternally. But he gave her some other service and said, wait for Ram, and so she's waiting for Ram. Here's one of the verses directly from Valmiki Ramayana. Mayatu vididham vanyam samchitam purusharshava tavarte purusha vagrya pampayas tirasambhavam. O best among men, O tiger among men, I've collected and kept for your sake different kinds of forest food grown on the bank of Lake Pampa. She feels that this good fortune has come to her, supremely transcendental good fortune has come to her because of the blessings of her preceptors. Even her preceptors didn't have the same facility. That is, the Lord coming before them. They were meditating upon him, but in her case, he's coming before them, before her. So she's feeling blessed by their association. And this commentator, it's a very special commentator, gives this explanation. I want to read it. Ram is referred to as Purusharshava. Rishabha, meaning like Rishabdev. Bull. Purusha, Rishabha, meaning a bull among men. Or because a bull is the emblem of Dharma, or the upholder of Dharma. But another meaning of Purusha, Rishabha, is that someone who's taking care of the field with the assistance of a bull. So when you're taking care of a field, you're wanting to see the good things grow and the bad things are removed when you're doing gardening and agriculture. So his commentary says, the personality of Godhead came to see Sabari because she's like an old plant. And he did not allow her to wilt because she's a virtuous old plant. So he wants to sustain and maintain and benedict her. Purusharshava. This is commentary. And Purusha Vyagra means tiger among men. So she's addressing Ram as tiger among men. And although he's a man, he's actually a lion. And the nature of a lion is when the lion sets out to do something, there's no turning back, they keep going. So it's indirectly saying, I know, this is the commentary, I know that you have a mission. Your mission, because she knows, she has past, present, and future knowledge. You're searching Sita, you'll be successful. And there's no turning back, there's nothing that's going to stop you. But she wants to do some simple service at the same time. A common part of all this little narration comes particularly from Padma Purana. It's not in Valmiki Ramayana, but in Padma Purana it says that Sabari tasted the fruits, and then she gave the nice fruits to Ram. Now, in deity worship, we don't do things like that. We don't taste and then offer to the deity. That's a no-no. Prabhupada would comment, in your country, people commonly do that. But with deity worship, we don't do that. But Sabari was on another platform. Her interest was, I only want the sweet ones, because apparently there's things in the forest that, although it's a fruit, it's sour. She didn't want to give sour fruits, only the sweet fruits. So she tasted, and those fruits that she knew were sweet, then she gave, those from that place to Ram. And he was happy to accept it. Spontaneous devotion is different than regulative devotion. She was on the spontaneous devotion platform. We don't imitate those on the spontaneous platform. Here's a little detail. Prabhupada's disciple Palika wanted to ask Prabhupada, how do we know if we've given sufficient salt to a vegetable preparation? You're not supposed to taste, so how do we know? We may not have enough salt, may have too much salt. And the principle you've taught us is you can always add salt, but how do I know I've put enough salt? And then Prabhupada gave this concession. He said you can take just a pinch, step out of the kitchen, and on the end of your tongue you drop a pinch and see, is the salt enough? If not, you can add some more. But it's not for your enjoyment. So Sabari wasn't doing for her enjoyment. Most people, when they eat something while cooking, it's for their enjoyment. But she wanted to see, and so she could offer, and Ram graciously accepted. So after all that service was done, Ram made a request. He wanted to see where the sage Matunga had resided, where he did his worship, where he did his fire sacrifice, and the whole area. He wanted to get a little tour. The sanctified ashram of the sage Matunga. So she's happy. She gets up and they go on a little tour. Just see this famous forest known as Matunga Vana. Here those spiritual masters of mine perfected themselves by performing sacrifices and worshipping the holy places with mantras. This is the altar called Pratyaksha Stali, where those sages offered flowers with hands shaking due to old age. Just see how this altar maintained its unequaled effulgence because of the influence of those sages' austerities, and is illuminating everything around it. The 7 oceans were brought to this place by their meditation. They did this because they were unable to go to those oceans due to weakness from fasting. Their clothes, which are made from tree bark and in which they had bathed, are hanging on these trees in this area and have still not dried. These garlands of flowers and blue water lilies, which they offered for worshipping God, have not wilted at all. Now, with your permission, I simply want to leave my body. I wish to gain the association of those perfected sages to whom this hermitage belongs and to whom I have served. Ram and Lakshman looked at each other. They looked around the situation and they said, "This is wonderful." And so, with their consent, O ascetic, you have worshipped me with devotion. You may go wherever you like. With matted locks, tattered bark clothes, and deerskin, Sabari consigned her old and emaciated body to the fire at that moment, and with the permission of Ram, ascended to the spiritual world, her body glowing like fire, adorned with wonderful ornaments and beautiful garlands, anointed with fragrant scents, robed in most beautiful clothes, she appeared like a streak of lightning, her body shining, bright, and her face contented. By virtue of her self-meditation, Sabari went to that sacred world where the holy sages lived because of their godly deeds. So Sabari departs, and Rama and Lakshman are left behind, going, wow. And the commentator, this wonderful commentator, is describing how what Ram's thoughts are and what Lakshman's thoughts are. Ram, I happened to see a lady of unswerving loyalty to her teachers, by which adoration alone she is going to her desired worlds. Seeing such pious people will definitely yield good results from now on. Hence, some good shall betide us, for we have a glimpse of a pious place and a pious soul. Of course, that's Leela. And then Lakshman is thinking, this lady served her teachers with such devotion, by which she is going to the spiritual realm, as she desired. I'm serving my brother, who is my teacher, God, and my everything, namely Ram, to have an iota of Sabari's merit. All the problems which have befallen to Ram, has it been because of my neglect of my duty? The mood of the servant, of his master, Ram. Inspired by this nice quality of Sabari. It's not just so, they directly had first-hand experience of her elevated nature. She was a pure devotee, and she was respected by all as similarly being a pure devotee, a pure soul, because she was. The material qualification wasn't the criterion, the spiritual qualification. So Ram is now speaking to Lakshman, saying, what his thoughts were. This is going to change our fortune. Having come here to this very special place, heard about and seen the place of worship of Matanga, and meeting Sabari and seeing her qualification, I feel very encouraged. All this good fortune that came is washing away whatever misfortune was there, and I'm feeling very enthused. We'll be successful. Let us go take our bath in Lake Pampa. So they go to Lake Pampa, and different versions of the Ramayana say as he's seeing the scene, the beauty and the sound of the swans, and the peahens and peacocks and the birds and the flowers, and everything he sees reminds him of Sita. So he just then feels very sad again. And once again, Lakshman supports him, saying, now is the time, let's find Sugriva. All indication is he is the way that will help us find and regain Sita. Let's find Sugriva. A hero never becomes filled with limitation like this. Let us continue on with our purpose. That kind of communication goes on again and again. Life has its misfortune for everybody. And it's easy to get distracted by the misfortune and lose sight of the higher purpose. And so those that have fixed consideration of the higher purpose, you would say the mission of life, you can have the strength to deal with the misfortune in a proper way and get the blessings of the personality of Godhead to move further. Just a last thing. Valmiki Ramayana is the gold standard for Ramayana, and in Sanskrit, one of the earliest and greatest epics of spiritual literature in India. Much later in time, a Tamil-speaking author in the Sri Vaishnava tradition also wrote a Ramayana in Tamil. It's known as the Kamba Ramayana. Familiar? You're familiar. So it's a celebrated Ramayana, especially for Tamil-speaking people. And there are some differences, and specific to the Sabari narration, it's different than what I described in the beginning, like who was Sabari before she was Sabari. So in this Kamba Ramayana, the rest of the storyline is pretty much the same, but in Kamba Ramayana, in her former life, Sabari was a Gandharva, or the daughter of a Gandharva king. The Gandharva king was Chitra Kavacha. And Chitra Kavacha's daughter Malini became married to a great sage. And the great sage was Vitihotra. And Vitihotra, as Brahmana, was often engaged for long stretches of time in meditation on Brahman. So unfortunately, Malini got herself involved in a relationship with a hunter, Kalmasa. And when her husband came to know, he cursed her. Malini, you are engaged with a hunter. I curse you, you become a hunter. You take birth in the family of hunters. So she pleaded with her husband to mitigate the curse, and he said the mitigation is that you will be delivered by Ram. So she knew that, and it didn't, in this Kamba Ramayana, it's not that she took birth as the daughter of a hunter, but she immediately became Sabari, wandering about in the forest. And so she became attracted to this hermitage of Sage Matanga, one of the reasons being the flowers and the fragrances of the flowers, and the whole scene was so outstanding. She was attracted and was accepted by Sage Matanga. And she lived for a long time, serving the sages and so forth and so on. And then this visit of Rama and Lakshman, and when Rama and Lakshman are served properly, she describes how to find Sugriva on top of Rishimukh mountain, and she requests permission to enter into fire, and she enters into fire. Immediately she was transformed into Malini. The curse was mitigated by Ram. This is Kamba Ramayana. And all of a sudden, her husband, Vitihotra, the husband of Malini in the Gandharva Loka apparently, descended in a celestial chariot. And saluting, paying his respects to Ram, they went to Gandharva Loka. So there's a detail in different, there are details in different Ramayanas, respected, revered Ramayanas, and it gets confusing sometimes, because like, what's going on? Is it this or is it that? It's not like, who can, there are versions of Ramayana that were not recommended to read or become familiar with, because they're not bona fide or authorized. Shukadeva Goswami says the same thing at the beginning of his narration in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are many versions of Ramayana. I only speak on the authorized ones. So what to speak of after 5,000 years, so many more. But this Kamba Ramayana is very much revered. You know, these it's popular, but it is said that it very, very closely follows Valmiki Ramayana. And so there's some differences in its structure, and to some degree also in the details of the message they're in, and certainly in the language, the Tamil language instead of Sanskrit language. The meter is different and things like that. But it's a much loved Ramayana. One of the ways to appreciate differences is there are different cycles of the yugas, and this one may be for this cycle of yugas, and that one may be for that cycle of the yugas, and so on. We find. So, Sabari. Did you learn some new things about Sabari tonight? Yeah. Fake personality. One of my favorites in Ramayana. Any discussion? Yeah?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. What you mentioned about Virada, what is that obstacle that particular demon presents?
Inattention. I remember hearing.
Yeah. He became cursed because he was supposed to be doing some service, but he wasn't attentive to his service, and he was cursed to fall. and take this position. Now, let me see, I find this. This isn't directly from Valmiki Ramayana, this is commentary. But, Virada represented hypocrisy. And we'll see that tomorrow. As he says things about Ram that's actually appropriate for him. Hypocrites they find fault with other people when really the fault is within themselves. Okay.
Sure.
We'll discuss some more tomorrow.
Krishna Guru Maharaj, I am Sundari Leela. Maharaj, when we see the pastimes of devotees, there is a lot of association for them. Even Narada, he is in between like sages and everything. And if you see Sabari, she is with Martanga Maharshi. So everybody is having their association continuously 24/7. So, and they could achieve the goal of life, going back to Godhead. But what about us?
What about us?
What about me, basically? I'm
Well,
not with devotees 24/7. So, how to...
There's a very nice purport. This in the context of the Dhruva Maharaj narration, this question came up. He had Narada's association. It was only brief, but he had his instructions. And he had faith in Narada, and he had faith in the instructions, and he had motivation. It was material motivation, but he had motivation. And he got, the personality got its association, the touch of the conch shell of, so how are we to be touched? How are we to get that mercy? So there's a nice purport in relation to the Gajendra Moksha Lila, where Gajendra also gets that mercy. And the touch of the personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada explains, for us, so that's your question, for you, deity worship, he specifically points to, and the scripture or the process of hearing and chanting is also a way to get the mercy and receive that touch. So the deity, you know the meaning. It's not wood or metal or stone, although one might say, wait a minute, I see wood and metal. But it's a form of the personality of Godhead made available for us so we can see him, although we only have material perception just now. We can see him, we can touch him, we can bathe him, we can dress him, we can have direct contact with him. It's a merciful manifestation. And those who are beyond dull senses and are spiritually enlivened, then they'll understand what we don't understand. We're just accepting on faith. But the contact, the mercy, is in that merciful form. And same with the sound vibration. The long story, but I won't go into the long story. Prabhupada's statement, many times, in many circumstances, would say, some people say, Arjuna was so fortunate, he could directly hear Krishna, and I'll never be so fortunate, so what about me? You know the answer. The answer is, when the spiritual master speaks the words of Krishna, it's Krishna speaking. That's the same message as Gajendra Moksha's purport. The scripture is Krishna speaking. So we read the scripture, or we hear the spiritual master describe the message of the scripture, and it's Krishna speaking. The person is there's a speaker. And so the sound is coming out the speaker, but over here there's somebody speaking. And it's going through the technology, and it's coming out the speaker. So Bhagavad Gita is Krishna speaking. And someone speaking what Krishna is speaking is Krishna speaking. They're the voice, or the medium through which, the instrument through which Krishna is speaking, but it's Krishna speaking. As much as Arjuna. Now, Dhritarashtra heard what Krishna was speaking, but it didn't do the same thing for Dhritarashtra that it did for Arjuna. So, same for us. So our opportunity is there, ample. There's, through technology, there's recordings. You can imagine having a recording of Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. A digital recording device, the whole scene. So we don't have that. At that time there wasn't that technology. But we have Vyasadev's compilation. And it's the same. The potency is the same. The opportunity is there. Good question. It's an important question.
We have some questions from online. Sri Vallabha Prabhu is asking, is there special significance as to why Sabari, who had achieved perfection by the presence of Lord Rama, committed herself to the fire? She was already old and could have lived her life out and peacefully departed from this material world.
There's different moods for different souls, and that's Sri Vallabha, what you're saying, that's certainly an option. And her mood was, I want to be with Sage Matanga and serve him. So, she didn't want to wait. And she wasn't attached to her old body. Going back to this other description, this Purusha Vyagra. No, Purusha Rishabha. There we go. Purusha Rishabha. So she's in gardening or in agriculture. She's like an old plant, and so she sees Ram has come to nourish, and so she doesn't wilt and perish. That's from Ram's side. So, but from her side, she's been wanting. She wanted from so many years ago to be with Sage Matanga and be in his service. Her statement was, it's not that he needs service, but I need his association so that I can be in service. And that was her mood. And it can be different for different people, and that was her mood. She wanted to be in his service. Of course, she could be in his service remotely, but she wanted to be in his service directly. So why did Prabhupada voluntarily give up his body? He could have stayed and done something other than what he did. He was in a transcendental mood to depart. And voluntarily he departed.
And Rutul Prabhu is asking about the question I have is, can Kanishta Adhikari taste
bhoga while preparing?
No. I mean, Kanishta Adhikari, we just follow instructions. And by following instructions, the instruction is Krishna is to be the enjoyer. So whether you're on this stage, that stage, or the other stage, we follow instructions. And we don't accept something until it has been offered to Krishna. So this particular example that Prabhupada in Palika, for the sake, it's not like, anyway, we shouldn't take advantage of an instruction to become an enjoyer. In her case, it was quantity cooking. If it's a small preparation, you just do measurements. So much of this and so much of that and so much of the other, and that's it. You don't need tasting to see how it came out because you're following a recipe. But if it's large quantity, then it's sometimes confusing or uncertain. Now, experienced person will know just by experience. This is the proper amount, and that's it. No, I'm not a cook, but I've seen cooks, and it's not at all a common thing. In ISKCON kitchen, the cook steps outside and drops something, a little tiny drop on the tip of their tongue. It's not at all a common experience. Better to have something that doesn't have enough salt than trying to be the enjoyer. You can always add some salt.
Sri Kishore Prabhu is asking, Maharaj just mentioned about conditional surrender. Do seeking some material desires from Lord fall in this category, or is it higher or lower?
Well, it's material desires is a mixed devotion, and it's standard for the conditioned souls that are engaged in devotional service to have mixed motivation. However, in this case, Kabanda was, you do this and I'll do that. It wasn't just like mixed, it was, I'm not going to tell you until you do what I want. It was that kind of a conditional. And, Ram accepted. And then he gave the information that was needed. Now, Ram is omniscient. He doesn't need Kabanda to tell him anything. But he was accepting that service. So it's lower than a mixed devotee. Because the mixed devotee just is mixed. It's not like a condition.
And this is Veda. She was asking about the demoness that Lakshmana disfigured other than Shurpanakha.
Yeah. So, well, the first was Tataka, then it was Shurpanakha, but the disfigured is after Jatayu's funeral. They go into a deep dark forest, and some demoness approaches. And, a Rakshasi demoness screaming, wailing, and doing her thing. And there isn't it's very short description of that exchange. And Lakshmana disfigures her. In her case, it's her nose, her ear, and her breasts are cut with a sharp sword, and she goes screaming back into the forest. There's not a whole lot spoken about her.
Maharaj, I had a question about Sabari exemplified loyalty to the instructions of spiritual master. I was just wondering, like, sometimes I feel like I'm not able to follow some instructions. Is this like a breach of loyalty or?
It depends. Probably not, but it could be. I mean, you could say it depends. If it's, that is to say, supposing I accept, like Krishna's instructions to Uddhava in Canto 11. If there are instructions, and due to my conditioned nature and where I am in my spiritual trajectory, there is an instruction I'm not able to fulfill as fully as I would like to. So it's not in the category of what you're describing. It's just weakness. So, but where there isn't it's like Dhruva. When Dhruva heard instructions of Narada that he felt he couldn't fulfill, he explicitly said and felt, your instructions are right, the instructor is right, the instructions are right, I'm not able to follow. And he gave his reason, my heart is broken. So if there's an instruction, and I have faith in the instruction and the instructor, but I'm unable to fulfill it because of I'm not weak at this particular stage. It's one thing to say I can't, it's another thing to say I won't. Or thus far I have been unable, I think it's a better way to put it. So it depends. Okay?
This is related to the conditional surrender. What helps a person to cultivate unconditional surrender?
Practice. Leaving aside the conditions, leaving aside expectations, and trusting in the person and the process, ultimately trusting in Krishna. You have something?
Amara Mataji asking question.
Okay.
Sabari had so much patience that she waited for Lord Rama while serving the order of her spiritual master.
Yeah.
How do we cultivate patience while happily serving without fruitive expectations?
How do we cultivate patience?
While serving without fruitive expectations.
Well, I think the question gives the answer. You say it reverse. If you have expectations, or you have fruitive expectations, you want fruitive results, you're not going to be patient. Passion irritates the mind. You lose patience because you want the result. So mode of goodness is you can be very patient. And one of the things that helps with patience without fruitive results is you have confidence that Utsahandishchaya Daryat. Read that section of Nectar of Instruction and you'll have the answer. I have conviction, I have full confidence in the process. And so I'm going to stick with it and be patient because I have trust in the process. Anything? Okay. True to your word.
Yeah.
Okay. Something?
One more question. Vinod Prabhu is asking, Lord Ram did not exhibit any kind of mystic pastime. Then how did Sabari know that Rama is the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Because of realization on the spiritual platform. Without showing mystic power, she had realization on the spiritual platform. And several examples of that in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's divinity and so forth. There's many other examples. So understanding the divinity of Ram doesn't require a display of mystic power, just her pure heart and his presence. You have something?
So, question like why it's always so easy for people who are with the simple hearted like Sabari or Guha or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's travel like that Brahmana who is not educated but he just wanted to follow the spiritual master instructions. So even though he was reading, doesn't know any reading, but he was reading the Bhagavad Gita upside down, right? So, but when, at least I relate to myself, like means it gets so complicated. Though here, like so many lectures, like Krishna is supreme, we need to follow the spiritual process, path, follow the instructions. It gets so hard, like, and gets deviated so many times. So, how we could develop that similar nature, or like means get simple at like proper statement, like means simple living and high thinking. That would maybe, I guess, like simple living might make people to take it easily, get to the process of accepting the process. So
there's many other references that are right on the topic of your question. It's not that your lifestyle has to change in order for you to become simple. It's the heart has to change for you to become simple. Simple for the simple, difficult for the crooked. Simple for the simple. So how do you become simple if you're complicated and get easily distracted, deviated, etc.? That's your question.
yeah, kind of complicated, and then like get into like many entanglements. What we say like means, and even learning so many things, like to be like satisfied with the things, then like still want to acquire more materially, or whatever we call it, like means getting deviated from the things. So though I'm practicing Krishna consciousness for the last 6 or 7 years, I still feel like I would have inculcated many better things and I would have got better at it, but I have nowhere close what I would have been, or I was not. I always wonder and think like it's like when I look at some of the people like with a simple-hearted, or like people does not have too many complications applying logic to things, all things. I feel like it gets more easier for them to accept the process of bhakti and take up things and go further easier, and for some people it gets harder, and at least for me I feel it's because a lot of times after I think, why I have to do things like simple example is like Suchi Muchi, like a lot of devotees they try to not to touch the cooking bowls or the serving bowls with the eating hands and all, but I grew up by seeing my grandmother doing it, but I never got it, but still I don't feel it. But some of the people do it. I was giving that as an example, but like I was saying, like some of these simple things, but I try to apply logic to them and try not to following them. Means so I don't know if that's the thing which is making my progress like going slowly compared to. I was just trying to correlate with them, like because in Sabari's case or Guha's case, like they are not fully educated, but they have been told by their spiritual masters to just follow this. So they just followed, and then
when you have, you're throwing several things out at once. And I don't think I'll be able to respond to all of them. It's good to have heroes or role models or a virtue to showcase and strive for. And the simplicity is certainly a valuable one. Take the opposite of simplicity, and what do you have? You can go with under different labels or different titles or categories, but complexity. Some of our acharyas, many of our acharyas, have elaborate, detailed, overwhelmingly meticulous scriptural references and putting this together with that, together with that, together with that. And it's not a disqualification, nor is it a qualification. If someone doesn't have that, they can't be, simple in heart. So it's not having an analytical brain or tendency. It's not a problem, provided you apply it in the right way towards what? Is it about understanding Krishna, or is it about, I got to have my intellect convinced, otherwise I'm not on board. Or even worse, I'm just rebellious. And if this doesn't make sense, then I'm checking out, or I'm stepping back. So I'm not saying that you're doing that. I'm just saying having an analytical brain is not a problem, per se. It can be if it's misapplied. So then we need role models to see how to properly apply it. So what's to help you get beyond the misapplication? And it's the focus on the intention of pleasing Krishna, and do it in certain areas, like take this little example of how you handle cooking bowls. And that's a very simple application. And if your intelligence needs to be convinced, why? Well, cleanliness. What does the right hand, left hand do? And you use the right hand for right hand things, and use the left hand for left hand things, and it makes sense. Then you just have to practice it. Hari Sori, you know who he is? Hari Sori, Prabhupada disciple, his personal servant for longer than anybody else. shared this with me. Prabhupada was meticulous. This is specifically with the hands and the bowls thing. Prabhupada was meticulous about cleanliness. He wasn't obsessive, he was just meticulous about cleanliness. So, I can't remember exactly the detail, but Hari Sori was being trained by Prabhupada in cleanliness, because Prabhupada was meticulous. You're going to be around Prabhupada, you have to be trained. So, it had something to do with, he was serving prasadam, and in serving the prasadam, he did something with his hand. Prabhupada said, go wash your hand. And then, some time passed, and later on, he did the same thing, and Prabhupada raised his voice. And he said, Prabhupada had this tendency. If you made a mistake, he would explain what not to do, what to do. It was, very calm. And once he explained, he expected that you would do. And if you didn't, then he would raise his voice. Purposefully, not out of anger, but it was just part of his way of training people, that he would expect there would people not know, but when you know, then you do. So Hari Sori said it happened the third time, and and Hari Sori just broke down crying, saying, I'm just this fallen person, this incorrigible, I can't be trained, because I just don't have a standard of cleanliness. It's just my upbringing. There's this question about not being able to follow instruction. Now, Prabhupada didn't dismiss him. Prabhupada loved him. But he wasn't able to meet the standard that Prabhupada wanted. But he wanted to achieve that standard. So he didn't have objection to the principle. Prabhupada explained the principle. Cleanliness is next to godliness. That's a principle, and this is the standard. This is what cleanliness looks like. This is cleanliness, and over there is not, so go wash your hands. So, it wasn't about coronavirus, it was about cleanliness. And there's another devotee, I won't say his name, but he was invited. We're going to have a little gathering, and for discuss something. And he said, standing at the door, we're all at the doorway, ready to come in. And he said, I'm sorry, I've been trained by Prabhupada, but you just, not only you leave your shoes out there, but anything that's in your hand, you have to leave it out there. There's a little shelf outside my room, put it over there, because I can't help it, I was trained by Prabhupada. Meticulous with cleanliness. Not obsessive, just meticulous. So, that's just on the, some procedure. Then what to speak of, philosophy, and how does this fit together with that? And our brains are so tiny and conditioned, and we see in material ways, and we have invested confidence in the material ways of seeing things. We're conditioned souls. So, what to do?
Yeah, that's where actually I get.
So I'm saying apply the principle of simplicity in areas that are simple. And then when you apply areas of simplicity in areas that are simple, then you just keep expanding the field. And then when things are more in the complex, like an analytical brain, I have an analytical brain. And I don't like, it's part of my psychophysical nature. I don't have a problem with it. I just have to learn, I have learned how to direct it in a way that's going to take me to Krishna rather than take me away from Krishna. It's not an obstacle. It's a facility for service to Krishna. Now, some people don't need that. Some people have that propensity, and so learn how to direct it. So the operative principle is for the pleasure of Krishna. You know, go back to the simple. Cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Pleasing to Krishna, so we do it. It's quite simple. It's quite simple. And then, so in areas that are more complicated. And some people just have like a PhD brain and they go there. They get into this like really detailed stuff. That's okay. Do it in a way, especially in our modern time, let's say people that had those propensities in previous time, they would find full satisfaction with just within the Vedas. An analytical brain with intellectual capacity is oceanic. Take any field of study and we're not so intelligent. And we misapply what we do have. And that's what's the problem. So you take that to one who studies this sacred conversation, worships me with his intelligence. So take your intelligence to Bhagavad Gita and worship Krishna. Try to understand the message. And you run into things you don't understand, that's okay. Or you think, it says this over here, it says that over there, what's going on here? So then you inquire. You apply your intelligence to that which is going to purify you, in principle. And then you're fulfilling, and at the same time your heart is moving towards the simple side as opposed to the complicated side. It's at the heart level. Pleasing Krishna. That's what heart level means. Relationship. So let's say it the other way. We're not yet at the state. What you described is, it can be described as, not be sufficiently connecting with what the purpose of bhakti is. The purpose of bhakti is pleasing Krishna. And the more you can connect with the purpose of bhakti being pleasing Krishna, anukulyena Krishna anushilanam is for the pleasure of Krishna. That's at the heart level. That's